Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's jump into the hardest of the Abyss Raid dungeons, Birth of Origin. Make sure you always have giant stone apples on hand, as you always want super armor and damage reduction for every phase in this dungeon. I prefer keeping mine in auto-consume slots at a 60 to 80% MP threshold for permanent uptime. All of the phases in this dungeon have important mechanics to remember. For phase 1, you always want to stay in the corner to avoid missing skills and dealing max damage. Bosses, again, always debuffable for all phases. Most of the attacks are Rand swinging his sword and launching you unless you have super armor. He can inflict the Abyssal Flame debuff, which makes all of your damage heal instead, though it can be cleansed. Also, these crystals will randomly spawn all over the map, unfortunately right next to us here. They have a suction/mini silence effect that does some damage, and it's just plain annoying. It can only be destroyed with a mechanic that I'll get into later. Occasionally, a random party member will get a black hole debuff timer indicated by this text. Said member should place it away from the party and away from crystals, and there's a cheese area that you can place it on both sides. I messed up here, but here's what those spots actually look like. Basically, you want to use unique hyperexcel to jump up on the furthest sides, and you can place it quote-unquote out of bounds. The black holes silence anyone with uncleansable silences, and multiply if they're put on a crystal. Just practice the out of bounds technique, as it's the safest method of placing black holes. Here's what it looks like on the right side. Ran will tether two random members, creating a link like in 15.5.1. The link damages other party members and puts their consumables on cooldown. However, this link is the only way to damage and remove crystals. The only issue is a strict timing, as the link duration is exactly the amount of damage a crystal takes to go from 100 to 0. Move fast, since there's no debuff indicator and it's just on your character model. The last regular attack is a double dash that spawns flames that apply the Abyssal Flames debuff. Here's what those look like. This phase's ultimate is Space Finder. Rand spawns 16 orbs on the map, with 4 of them being safe from hazardous effects. Light pink is safe, purple teleports you randomly, and red does damage. There are usually 2 safe spots top and bottom, but there's 3 variations of revealing them and checking, based on the current boss HP. When the boss is low, the actual color is revealed randomly, so make sure you're keeping an eye out. Medium has the orbs reveal when you walk over, not shown here, and high is when all the orbs are revealed for the entire duration, also not shown here. If 2 players intersect in an orb, that orb turns purple and teleports them, so stay apart. Here's what all the possible patterns look like, followed by a recap and the synergy effect for this phase. Phase 2 has a lot more co-op mechanics, so make sure you all know how to use emotes, voice lines, etc. to communicate certain patterns. Your party should always stand towards the sides, so bring giant stone apples so you don't get knocked off. Rand will always start by connecting the space, meaning 2 players get marked with a debuff. After the debuff times out, it will create a portal to the other player where they are standing, and these portals are always in the ground. The first 3 times you could ignore this pattern and just place them together. Entering any portal gives you a debuff that doesn't allow you to enter either portal for 3 seconds. You can use this to stack debuffs of Energy Conversion Ring if you need or want it. On the 4th cast, place the portals at the opposite end of the map to prep for his ultimate. If he does not use his ultimate on the 4th portal cast, he will on the 5th for sure. You need to hop side to side to avoid getting hit by this large square explosion. Since Rand teleports to a random player, all members should follow the portal to ensure success. Hop onto the top platform so Ran doesn't block the portal itself from moving back and forth. Count the number of times a portal pattern occurs so the party knows when to place them at the edges. Failing to dodge this pattern results in death as it ignores all resurrection buffs and titles. Once it is done, the portal pattern counter should reset to 1 and repeats. Ran will sometimes also ignite a whole level of platforms with Abyssal Flames. This applies both Abyssal Flame and Abyssal Inferno debuffs. Abyssal Inferno is the same as Flame, but it can't be cleansed, so make sure to avoid hitting the boss if you are debuffed. The Giant Square is the Gravity Field pattern, which applies a debuff every second up to 4 stacks. This debuff reduces all speed per stack and can only be removed by taking 5 stacks and being flattened. Cleanse it by taking all stacks if possible or necessary, but watch out for other overlapping patterns. Unstable Abyss Aura, or as I call it, Le Bomba, spawns a small crystal near the party. Someone needs to pick it up and avoid the boss and party as the explosion deals hefty damage and pushes the party as well as hitting the boss, regardless of super armor. If it's your job to take this, make sure you have high mobility and or unique Hyper Excel. Finally, we have the Crystal Piercing pattern. 4 crystals, 1 per party member, appear on the map, and each links to their very own party member. The boss will dash through the center, so the party must make him dash through all links to pass this pattern. Touching another player's link cuts your tendon for 8 seconds, meaning you can't dash, so be careful. Here's what happens if members fail to block. Now let's wrap up with the party synergy and an overview and additional tips for this phase. Make sure someone has Dark Orbs for Phase 3. King of the Abyss has a lot of mechanics, so make sure to watch this whole section before you go in. First, note the F4 key at the top that swaps between 2 auras, purple, Abyss, and blue, Shadow. In order to damage the boss, you must have the opposite colored aura. This is done by simply pressing F4 and can be done at any point while you are alive. The boss's aura corresponds to the outer ring of his core, as shown here. Starting the fight off, you have some time to deal some damage and F4 to the right color. King will always spawn right and his color will always be opposite when he's on the left side. When you see him reach behind, he is going to do his bullet hell pattern. Use Dark Orbs to lower the damage dealt and tank it with some proper healing. Orbs that match your aura color will not harm you if you need to just dodge. He will sometimes swipe his hand and attack an entire horizontal segment, but this can be easily tanked by anyone. His first pattern is Meteor. The king drops a meteor in a random location that slowly falls to the ground. Here's an overview of the meteor mechanic, and make sure you pause if you need to. Next, we have the Absorption pattern. The Abyss King calls 4 orbs to come from the opposite side to absorb them. They're always in the order of purple, then blue, then purple, and then blue, and you must match your aura to absorb them. Once you take all 4, a light orb is absorbed by the king, which increases his damage taken. If you miss any, he will heal 80 bars and gain damage reduction, which is equal to around double the amount he takes from a light orb. Yikes. Regardless of which he absorbs, he will then switch sides and aura color. So I recommend having one main absorb member and a backup near the king, as client these things happen a lot here, so it's better to be safe than sorry. I also recommend using Hyperexcel if needed, as they move faster per orb and can spawn anywhere vertically. Feel free to tune meteors to low HP during this pattern for a reason that will be explained soon. This pattern is critical for the dungeon and party synergy, so let's make a quick recap. Between mechanics, buff your DPS and debuff the boss in corners. Let's talk about the matching, aka Unstable Abyss Power pattern. These marks and markers appear randomly on the field, and you must match each mark which is above ground with its marker which is on the ground. If you touch multiple marks, you may overwrite the previous one, which can result in an explosion. Be cautious to do one at a time, as the explosion hurts all members, not just the guilty one. You can pick these up regardless of aura, and currently picked up marks show in your debuff bar. If everyone helps, this pattern should breeze on by. But this oftentimes overlaps with other patterns, so be careful. The backrooms is a pattern that can be entirely avoided, which I'll explain how in a little bit. The boss will teleport everyone to the back and summon a random boss from a previous Abyss Raid dungeon. The summoned phantom boss will cast its ultimate attack in a smaller arena. So anyways, here's what each boss will do and all the changes that it might make. After sending you to the backrooms, the boss will always use Devour. There are 4 total safe areas, some purple and some blue, which you can only see when you're the corresponding aura color. Call out the number if you can count them, as there's always at least one of each. Stay inside a safe spot alone, as having multiple members in the spot removes the spot for a few seconds until it's isolated again. Using any action inside the shield will deactivate it, so sit still. The king will always switch sides after this, and the attack has an internal cooldown, so it won't happen again for a bit. Now, how to avoid this attack is very simple in theory. Basically, the king will never backroom or devour if there's a meteor presence on the field. Since the meteors are perma-freezable, do that until a second one spawns. By constantly having a meteor present, the boss will never use backrooms per its coding. Once a second meteor is summoned via text, it's safe to destroy the current one. Use this tactic to speed up runs, but make sure everyone is on the same page, especially your freezer. Now for the final and most important pattern, Berserk. At 5 bars, the King of the Abyss will heal to 120 bars and go Berserk. He spawns infinite meteors, black holes, blood hell orbs, etc. until absorption happens and ends. The trick here is to tune his health to around 10 bars beforehand and install until absorbing starts. While the pattern happens, make him go Berserk by bursting him to 5 bars. If done correctly, the Berserk lasts only a few seconds and then will stop. Here's what this looks like when successfully executed. It's important to always skip Berserk, as it's very difficult to survive during it. You also gain the Light of Hope, which removes adaptation debuff entirely and gives everyone 1.5 times cooldown acceleration. This makes the last 120 bars a cakewalk, but if you die, you lose this buff for the rest of the raid. He only goes Berserk and gives the buff once, so make it count. After Berserk ends, other patterns continue as normal, so keep your wits in check until he actually dies. Here's a recap of Berserk and how to deal with it. That's all. Thanks for watching, and good luck out there, Abyss Divers.